Business is brought to you by Audible.com.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Married with a Business. I'm Craig.
And I'm Allison.
And we're Married with a Business. We're here to share tips, tricks, stories of what it's like to be a married couple that own and operate businesses together, and a married couple that's been married for 20 years.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Well, a little bit late.
A little bit. Well, yeah, I know. We're 20 years a month and a half ago or whatever it was. But 20 years we've been married.
Yeah. And we were doing something super exciting. We were going away for our anniversary, right?
No, well, yeah. It all started, it was going to be our 20th anniversary. I was like, well, let's go do a trip. And then that kind of got squashed a little bit. And then I was like, well, let's do a weekend away.
Well, it got squashed because over Christmas, we went away for a huge trip with your mother to a warm place.
Yes, we did. We talked about that on an earlier episode. So we ended up saying, well, let's do a weekend away. And then that was like it became kind of tough. And then the boys, our two sons, were going to go on a winter camping trip.
Yeah, they were heading up to the upper New England for winter camping. And I thought, we could be in our house for 2.5 days with nobody. If I cleaned up, nothing would get moved.
And then there was a huge cold snap, and they were saying temperatures were going to be negative like 20 where they were going to go camping. So they canceled the camping trip.
Yeah.
And then they only did one night away on a small local camping trip with their troop. And Allison and I went out to dinner, and
the place we were looking at, thank goodness we didn't book, caught fire the day we were supposed to check in.
The place we were going to go stay at for the weekend caught fire right before, anyway.
But anyway, we're home, and we were home in our house, and it was lovely.
We did. We did have a nice evening out. We went out to dinner. We came back. We watched TV together. It was a very nice evening. The kids are back, and that's life, I guess.
Yeah, but they had a good time.
Best laid plans. Yeah. 25th anniversary, big trip.
Yeah.
Big
40th birthday, had to cancel because of COVID. 20th anniversary, had to cancel because of cold. We are just not good at this.
No, we're not so good at setting the big trips. We're just not so good at the couple thing.
I think what we need to do, and we're talking about it today, so I think we need to set up a process map for planning things.
I know. I like that.
And I think that's maybe that's would help me along. So
let me set the stage a little here, Allison. So you and our interior designer, Jessica, went away to a conference a year ago. And one of the things that you came back, so we talk all the time about, if you go to a conference, if you go to a speaker or something, try to get one thing out of it, right? That helps you or helps your business or whatever it might be. You guys came back with this concept of creating process maps in our business.
Yeah, and process maps aren't new to any of us, right? And a lot of the times this stuff isn't new to any of us. It's about looking at it in the right time, in the right place, and with the right person explaining it to you, right? So we sat through a workshop talking about process maps, and I was like, Jess, this is perfect. Because as many of you listeners know, over the last 2 years, we burned down our sales system, and we've been rebuilding it again. And we've had some things that have worked really smoothly and some things that haven't. And so being able to create a visual of what we're currently doing, we thought would be a really good idea.
So I guess the first thing I need, Allison, is explain what the difference is between an SOP, a standard operating procedure, and a process map.
All right. Well, a standard operating procedure is your how-to playbook. It is the step-by-step directions of how you do each individual task, right? So if we want to check our email,
right,
it's the step 1. Turn on your computer by hitting the button kind of thing. Open up Microsoft Outlook. So it's like the individual steps of walking you through every step of each individual task. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then the process map is more of like a visual representation of those big steps.
Right. So it's more of more of like a map, like what you would see if you were trying to get from point A to point B.
So on our development process, our first step is get the development agreement signed, right? And it's not how to do it. It's not how to create the narrative. It's not how to do it. That's the first big step. And then there are little bubbles of what we do next, but not the individual, like, open up the Word document.
Well, in the process map, the visual process map, which if you are following us on social media or you want to reach out to us, you can see pictures of our process maps for like our development agreement in remodeling. But in our process map, like, so it says development agreement signed, and then there's a little bubble next to it that says, here are the things that are part of that process.
Yeah, it's the process map uses visual flows. It uses boxes and arrows and symbols to note how tasks are moving from start to finish, whereas the SOP is the written directions or video now of how you actually do those things.
Right. And so like when you think about it, and like, so I was like, well, we already have all that. Like when you came back and you're like, well, we're going to do these process maps. And I was like, well, we already have all that stuff. We've got our written SOP manual, which is, cumbersome. It's big. It's got a lot of information in it, but we have that's searchable. We have all of these SOP videos that we've made for people to do things. And you were like, no, you don't get it. Like the process map isn't how to do the things. The process map is how you go through the process.
Right. And it's a visual that we can map the journey from a lead through each big step. And you could literally even give this to the homeowner, say, okay, these are the big categories of how we do it and where we do it.
And at the end of the day, it's really to kind of help our team, our homeowners, our clients, our team members, how to, visually see the steps that we need to take. Then they would go from there to the SOP or to the Loom videos that we create and know how to do each of those steps.
Yeah, and it makes it kind of a third party, like a neutral third party. There's no he said, she said, well, I always do it here. This is the process and the order in which we do stuff. So our goal especially when we sat down and started mapping our development agreement, was to identify where are we having bottlenecks. Can we visually see where things are getting stuck in the pipeline? Where is it taking 4 days? Where should we move something, which is what we came to? We needed to move a big chunk to a different part of the process because, for example, we needed to move where production was getting involved and looking at things earlier in the process. And so by being able to lay it out, they were physically able to like draw a line and say, I think we should be doing this here.
Right. And I think that's where the process map really helped me and helped us is like, I think in my head, how do I say this? Because I'm a high eye. I'm a very visual learner, which the process map definitely helps. But I always like envision things in my head. Like I know our process, I see it in my head, but I wasn't really good at like when it's in your head and it's something that you do every day, you just think that's the way it's done. When you put it onto paper and you look at it, you're like, oh, maybe that's not the best way to do it.
Right. And my goal in making it a visual is to create consistency for the team and our homeowners and being able to move things around this way, plug those holes where we're making mistakes.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this a long time. I mean, you and I have been running this business together for over 20 years before we were even married, and we've been talking about how we want to make this business scalable so that, other people can do our system. Other people can come in, be an employee, be a team member, be a salesperson or project manager, whatever, and do our system. And this visualization kind of helps them, see it clearly.
Right. Clear is kind. And if it's in our heads and it's not clearly down on paper, other people can't follow it. So the result is in our client management program, we were able to re-tag where to-dos fall in our templates too.
Now, so let's talk about we sat down in different groups. Like it depended. We did a production one. We did a development sales process one. I will say, as the owner, as the person who's kind of created the system and the sales process and runs it, it's very hard to move the entrepreneur, right? It's very hard. The leader is the hardest person to move.
And they're the ones who aren't following the systems.
I'll freely admit that. What are some things, I mean, I feel like we've done a good job. I feel like I've done a good job, patting myself on the back a little. What are some of the things that we did to get started to kind of like get us going into building that process map?
So Jess and I literally took a piece of paper and drew boxes and said, what are we doing now? And drew out the big boxes. And then and then we did it by hand. And I said, well, where are we talking to the architect? What are the things we need to be doing before we talk to the designer? And we kind of wrote out all of those things of what we were doing. And then she and I hand drew where things were going. And then we dumped it into a program, had people look at it, and they were like, no, that's not what we're doing. Or, oh, yeah, we should be doing it that way. So it was a kind of a lot of this manual discussion process, trying to get all of like those big lanes written down first.
Yeah, so kind of create that, I think you called it at one point an ideal path. Like, what is the ideal path from start to finish for your process? And just kind of write that on a piece of paper. Find a blank piece of paper, draw, a circle, draw a map.
So we started literally with the bubble of, okay, for this process, we're talking about the development of a project. So we get the signature. Then we talk to the architect and the designer. Then at that point, we were talking to the estimating team, and then we were going to contract, and then we were getting construction plans.
Right.
So we kind of had that laid out. And then when we talked to the team was like, no, we need to move this way from the sixth thing we do to the third thing we do.
Right.
Because they could see it better.
And it started helping us, it helps prevent things falling through the cracks. That's the goal of all of this.
And where the handoff's supposed to happen. So our bubbles are kind of where the big handoffs are supposed to happen. The salesman does this, then the next person who needs to do something is this. Then the next person. So those big bubbles are kind of where are we giving those batons handing off between departments, and so that we can pay extra attention to what needs to be done at those specific transfer points, and include in the SOPs those checklists to make sure that if something is going from the architect to the production department, everything the production department needs, the architect has taken care of.
Right. And like, I use the keep it simple, stupid kind of mentality with it, right? Like, you don't want to make it overly complicated when you're creating a process map.
No. And you don't need something fancy. Ours is we did it in like an Adobe Spark program, and it's real basic. I mean, there's a lot of other things that go into it, but just looking at the map is kind of is like a basic, there's white space, it's easy to read kind of thing. We started on a piece of paper. We took some Post-it notes and we put them on the dry erase board and kind of just moved it all around. Doesn't have to be like you have to do all of these things and then all of these things. Like, it's got to be easy to, when you're looking at it from 5 feet away, you kind of get it.
Yeah, you can go, oh man, we skipped that part, or we need to do that part before we go to the next step. So it's not about how, and like, I guess I've said this a couple times, but it's not about how you do the step.
It's about what you're doing.
Yeah, right.
And then the other thing we've been learning since we've been doing this is we thought, okay, it's done. I'm going to print it. We'll put it on the wall. It's a living document. And we are still refining and updating and making clarifications to it and seeing, hey, we say we want to do this. We've got it on the process map, but now we need an SOP or directions on how we do those things.
And do you think that's because of our business type? Like, we don't build widgets, right? Like, we're not doing the same thing every day. Like, every one of our projects is custom. It's different. Is that part of it, or is it going to be that way for any business that, hey, we may build widgets, but these things do change all the time?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think every company is constantly changing. You're getting better. You're seeing where something didn't work. And that's when you update your process map, right? So for a year, we were running it one way. Then we sat down with the process map and talked to the rest of the team. And they were like, it would be better if we did it this way, or we started this process here. So then we updated it. I think it's like with all of your standard operating procedures, your software changes. They're constantly coming out with updates. Something that may have worked well for years because the environment has changed or government regulations have changed. They're all living documents, and you have to spend time in your schedule to go back and just check in and revisit, and do we need to make a change, especially when new people are coming on board.
Yeah, I use the example of Frank Pepe's Pizza in Hartford, Connecticut, probably one of the best pizzas on the planet Earth, if you ever wonder. But I'm sure they make the pizza the same way that they made it in 1920 or whatever. They're using the same oven that they've been using for over 100 years. But one, prices change. Two, the cash register that they used in 1920s, not the, square that takes credit cards that they use now. So you've always got to be looking at your process and seeing, are there ways, one, that we can improve, and two, keep up with the times or keep up with the changes that are going on in the environment around me.
So your map about how you make the pizza might be the same, but other areas of the business might be different. But health codes have changed since the 1920s.
Inspections
have changed. So the way you make the pizza might not actually be exactly the same way.
Right.
And again, this isn't about micromanaging your team. It's about giving them clear expectations of this is how we do it. This is how we always do it. So our customers are always getting the same experience. And when somebody new comes in, you can get them to jump in faster. We just had a project manager start on our team, and the speed at which he is getting up to speed is so much faster than 3 years ago because our onboarding process has gotten better. And the things we talk about with a new team member are different now than they were 3 years ago because every time we do it, we're updating that process map.
And I think that this is probably something that stems from like the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and the fast foods of the world because they live in this world, right? Like process mapping, having like if you've ever been in a kitchen at McDonald's, like there are process maps everywhere on how to do things.
And it's got to be visual. No one's going to sit there and read all these paragraphs, right?
Right.
Every year, our attention span gets shorter and shorter.
Right.
But small businesses tend not to think about these things because we are so owner-operator driven. We are, for 20 years, creating the system as we're doing it. We're not documenting it.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got the map together. You've created it as a living document. Talk a little bit about like defining the boundaries, which is something that's going to come up in a future episode, boundaries. But talk about defining the boundaries of each, start and stop trigger of each section.
Great question. So when Jess and I were sitting in the airport starting this, we were writing too much information down, right? So it was the whole company from like when a lead comes in. And so then we decided where's the start and the stop gap for each phase of what's happening. So we had to determine what are our specific triggers. So that's why I keep saying for the development process, which is the one that I've got in front of me, the trigger is the development agreement gets signed.
It has nothing to do with the lead coming in, the salesperson going to the house. It has nothing to do with it.
Right. We have a whole different one-pager that's that process.
Right.
So we decided that, okay, we're talking about the development process. The trigger is it gets signed. So then we had to decide, well, what's the end of the development process? And we decided that the contract, reviewing the contract document and sending it out to get signed ends that because a signed contract will now start the pre-construction one-pager. Does that make sense?
Right.
So we're talking about within just this box of where we're working, what are the steps that we're doing? And what does that look like? So for us, it's this gets signed to the next set of things are ready to get signed. Again, depending on what your business is, that your different phases might look different.
Right. For us, we're looking at start and stops that fit one that look, from departmentally look at different phases. And for what our homeowners might be going through, it's different phases, right? So that they understand, they've met with us in the sales process, they've worked with us in the development process to design it. Then they're in the pre-construction process, which is permitting and prepping and all that stuff. Then they're in the construction process. So it's like they understand those phases of it. For you, it might be something completely different. If you're on an assembly line, it might be this part of the assembly line, then that part of the assembly line.
Or if your business is a restaurant, it might be from the time the patron comes to the door to the time that the waitress comes up, because in some restaurants, like last night, somebody different sat us and served us our water, and then the waitress came in. Who's doing what things? This is real. So the other thing we think about in that start and stop line is where are the handoffs? Where does something leave my court and get handed off to somebody else? So those are kind of, for us, like I said earlier, those are kind of our big bubbles, like when they're, because in construction, so many people touch the project.
And part of the reason this helps, us, especially in the process that we're specifically talking about, the development process, is sometimes we're trying to push too much stuff through before it's ready to be pushed through.
And I think that's been our biggest problem. People have been giving me a packet to look at for a contract, but design hasn't finalized it. Well, I can't look at it. So what information is required to move from step A to step B? We can't start the quote in putting the numbers together until we have the measurements.
Right.
And so that's where, for me, I've created a checklist. If you guys think that this is ready for me to look at, you will have gone through and checked off every box of what I say I'm going to need to do my portion of it effectively.
And so let's talk a little bit, Allison, about what about if there's an exception to the rule? What about if there is, hey, this is outside of, the process?
Well, this is where most things go wrong, right? So the projects for us that go sideways most often are the ones that aren't our typical process. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we've been thinking about is, what is that plan B? So 80% of the time, our company is creating the layouts and the plans, but 40% of the time, people are coming to us with plans done. So as we looked through this process map, we realized those are the projects that we've had the biggest challenges on. So what is that plan B? So we've been working on coming up with an alternate for this phase of, okay, what are the challenges we've had in the past, and what is development process map B look like if this scenario happens? Typically for us, we have one of two scenarios. We are making plans, or someone is coming to us with plans.
Right.
You might have 3 scenarios, and then in your big handoff, you have to decide: am I now following plan A, plan B, or plan C?
Yeah. So you're kind of creating a plan B process map, but the goal of it is that we were finding that they would come to us with plans, but we were still trying to follow our normal process map, and that wasn't working. So that's why now it's, if you kind of envision it, there's a Y, there's a fork at the road, right? And when they come to us with plans, then we go down plan B lane as a set of plan A lane.
Right. And I think that that's really helping us. And again, just as a team, being able to sit down and say, if this happens, these are the big bubbles we need to follow, as opposed to these bubbles over here.
Right.
Because every tiny hiccup requires a meeting between team members, right? So our goal is to identify where have we seen those hiccups in the past, so that we don't have to drop everything and have a meeting. We can say, okay, if someone is coming to us with plans, these are all the things everybody is going to need to know, just like before, because it speeds up communication. It gives us less errors. It reduces frustration. It drives me insane when I'm going through something. I get 2/3 of the way down. I have to stop and have to ask you a question. And then I get back on track, and then I have to stop and ask you a question. By letting you know what I'm going to need in advance, and then you giving me the form with the checklist saying you've given it to me already, it just makes all of our lives easier. And life is hard enough. And I tell this to all of our guys and all of our team. Life is hard enough. If we can identify where we have bottlenecks and challenges so that we can smooth them out, it just makes everybody's day so much easier, because we're all coming to work with stuff. Homeowners or clients are bringing us stuff. Where are the things that we're seeing all the time, so we can reduce those levels of frustration?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of it is with the process map, is to really, not that thinking isn't important, but the idea is to try to help you not have to be thinking all the time about everything, for you to be able to stop, look at this, and be like, oh, I haven't done these 3 things, to be able to go to the next step. So that's a lot of information, Allison, about process mapping. That's a lot of where should somebody start? What if you were okay, I don't have any process I have a great SOP manual, but I don't have any process maps. Where should somebody start?
There are some great apps. The AI is the fun keyword right now for everybody. So there tools that we were using. What tools are you using? Literally pen and paper. In your SOP manual, you probably already have the map. You just have to figure out what it is visually, so you can write it down. We did it on pen and paper, and then put it into Adobe. There was a template in Adobe that we used. Jess and I each picked different templates and put them together, and then we decided which ones we liked and which ones were most visually appealing to our team and easy to read for our team. So it can be a fun challenge and see what works best. But there are some free tools. We pay for Adobe. You could manually try and do it in a Word document. I find that to be the most challenging way. But some programs that we looked at were Micro. This is like a real-time whiteboarding. There's a free level and then a level that's a little bit a month. And that complexity is low. It's kind of pretty intuitive. Lucid Chart. It's clean, automated lines. Again, free tier, pay for tier. That's a little bit more complex. Canva has a lot of templates in it. They, again, free level, pro level, and that complexity is pretty low. And then, if you're a bigger company that needs a little bit more in depth, Visio has a deep Microsoft integration, and those have pay for models, but those are a little bit harder to use.
Yeah, and there's a ton of books out there about process mapping. I mean, everything for there's like a process mapping for dummy, flow engineering. So there's a lot of you could search process mapping. A lot of the books are visual if you look for process mapping books. Not a lot of ones that are available on Audible.
But we still love Audible.
We still love Audible. You could actually get a free 30 days of Audible on us if you go to audibletrial.com/bizmarried. I'm listening to Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy right now because he was in a Golf Digest magazine that I was reading, and his book blew up and Inner Excellence got real popular because I think A.J. Brown for the Eagles was seen reading it on the sideline.
Oh, yeah. He's got a good little book club going over there.
Yeah, and so that he was reading it on the sideline on TV once, and that kind of went viral. So I've been listening to Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy, but there's a ton of books that you can listen to on Audible, and you get a free 30 days of Audible on us if you go to audibletrial.com/bizmarried. And hey, if you want more information about our process mapping, if you want to get a copy of one of our process maps so you can see visually what it looks like. I know Allison will be posting it on social media, but you can find us there at Instagram at BizMarried. Find us on Facebook. Just search Married with a Business. You can also check out our website. It's marriedwithabusiness.net, and you can see everything there. You can reach out to us. You can connect with us on that website and learn more about it. So, process mapping, while it seems really simple, and it probably is really simple when you get into it, it's really important, Allison.
Yeah, and just a funny quick aside before we finish. Well, Jess and I were at the conference. One of the woman who was actually giving the presentation about process mapping was talking about how her husband was always frustrated in the morning and mornings did not flow well in their house. So she took they used JobTrend, and she took JobTrend and mapped out his morning routine, and then literally went through it to go over how he could streamline his morning routine to walk around less and get out of the house faster.
So it's not just for business, but also for life.
Yeah, it was really kind of fun.
All right, so check it out. Thanks everybody for listening this week. Check us out online. Don't forget to find us, and you can find us at marriedwithabusiness.net. Thanks for listening. And remember, not only is it important to focus on your business, but also your marriage, because we're married with a business.